Another day of college football, another day of college football transfers. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. We have committed to do this each day this week just to see what the interest was. And we've rounded up some excellent guests for today's show, our transfer portal live update edition here at the Voice of College Football. Please lock it in. Leave those comments and questions in the chat. And again, we do have some folks stopping by here in the next several minutes, talking Iowa, talking Iowa State, Texas as well. Those three for sure. And then some possibilities and some folks lined up, guest contributors for the rest of the week on Thursday and Friday. Our Ohio State Buckeyes live show came your way at 11 a.m. Eastern time on the Ohio State channel. Check it out. We've got a full slate here at the Voice of College Football for the rest of the day, and we will fill you in more on that. To the transfer portal, and I believe, last I checked, only a few additions today, and you could guess where they're coming from, because they're coming from the same spots, and it's the domino effect in play from Nick Saban's retirement. It's basically what we're looking at. Just about everything we're seeing in the last couple weeks is because and a byproduct of Nick Saban's retirement. Arizona all Pac-12 cornerback Tacario Davis. He's entered the transfer portal, 6'4", big cornerback, 6'4", led the conference with 15 pass breakups and was all Pac-12. And also at 25 tackles and picked off a pass. So Tacario Davis does not want to play for Brent Brennan, or at least that's what he's thinking right now. And then we've got a South Alabama linebacker who is withdrawn from the portal. So South Alabama linebacker Khalil Jacobs. So you got to think, interesting here when you see something like this, because you've got a productive linebacker at the group of 5 level, 56 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss. He had 3 sacks and a pick. Drew some interest from Alabama, Arkansas, and others. Those appear to be the headliners, but probably didn't see what he wanted, didn't hear what he wanted in the transfer portal from those particular teams of interest, and he decides playing at South Alabama down on the coast for the Jaguars isn't so bad. We've got shows coming up tonight, folks. We got Florida State Live coming up at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That's on the FSU channel. We also have our Miami show at 7 o'clock Eastern. Texas, Bleeding Burnt Orange. That's on the Big 12 channel at 7:30 Eastern. West Virginia Live. That's the Mountaineer Locker Room show with Frank Fear at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then we're going to circle on back here about 8:30 tonight. And we're just going to run down the candidates for the Michigan job should Jim Harbaugh move on from Michigan. So our transfer portal update, a bit slim today. We're waiting on some guest contributors to come on and talk some college football and break down their teams. Comments and questions in the chat, anyone? We've got the link if anybody would like to join, talk some college football. And also, we've got a record coming up later. I want to delve a little bit deeper into the issues at Florida and Florida State with the NCAA investigations going on there. The one at Florida State seems awfully flimsy to me on the surface. And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, the one at Florida seems pretty significant. We talked to our guy, David Soderquist from High Top Sports, and check out the video that we posted earlier today from Dave Soderquist on High Top Sports about the Jaden Rashada. Oh my goodness. The Jaden Rashada Florida situation, and a lot to untangle there, and a lot that may involve Rashada's recruitment from other schools. That could be part of it as well. We shall see. We shall see there. We also are supposed to be receiving ACC schedules today. We posted a video a couple days ago because on Monday, we had the ACC release first week schedules, week 0 and week 1 schedules for 2024. So we broke that down. Check out that video. And I've been awaiting, and I checked a few ACC schedules this afternoon, and apparently they have yet to be released for the rest of the season. Kevin's got a question here. Kevin says, hey, do you think players' loyalty is not to a team or coaches, but just who pays them more money now? I think that's a complicated question. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think you've got your players. I don't know what percentage of players, but I think we've got a number of players that simply say, I'm hitting the transfer portal and I want to make as much money as possible. And whoever pays me the most money, that's where I am headed. And that could be actually coming from a player who does not believe that he is going to get to the NFL and make money there. So he figures, if I make a couple $100,000 a year in college, I can't make the NFL. I'm not going to make money past this. I can get an education anywhere. I can make connections anywhere, because that's part of it with football players and athletes, not just the education, but even if they turn professional in something other than sports, as the commercial says, they make, in addition to their education, they make connections in college, and they can do that anywhere. So if given the choice, stay here at this school and make next to nothing, or go to this school and make $100,000 a year, still get an education at either place that I can become a professional in, that might be affecting those level of players more than it is the NFL bound players, possibly. Just throwing that out there. Now, in regards to the NFL bound players, I got to think that they're, in addition to whatever else draws these players, which we know this to be connections with the coaching staffs, who they enjoyed, who they built a relationship with, who they believe truly is going to help them, who is going to be good individuals to play for, work with, that the NFL development portion of this is huge. I don't think there's any question about that. If you're a certain level player, you're going to get paid at a number of stops. And the best players we've seen in the portal would be Caden Proctor. Now, that's a different deal. I believe that he truly just wanted to go back home and play for Iowa. And as long as there was monetary gain there, and I'm sure that there is, and it's significant, that it didn't have to be top shelf, top level, because he is projected to be an NFL player. Even if he has a disappointing career at Iowa, he is going to be an NFL player. He is that talented. He could turn himself into a first-round pick. And that's a good place to go to do so, is to go back to Iowa. But the NFL development piece, I believe, is huge. But yes, they are going, much like, just think about your own decisions concerning where you're working. Are you working there because you like the people? Are you working there because of the location? Are you working there because you believe that it's, maybe even though you're making a little less money, it's developing you for advancement in your industry? Dave's here. I got all those things in the Navy and they paid me. If someone has a value, they should earn that. Well, these players have value, obviously, so they are earning it. Now, whether you believe or I believe that they've earned it to the degree that they're being paid is another question. But they have the skills and the abilities, and they've shown it already to have earned the money. The players that are gaining so much of the talk and the attention from us, well, they've turned out to be really good college football players. Quinshon Judkins is a 1,400-yard back in college football with 15 touchdowns in a season. Will Howard is a pretty accomplished quarterback at Kansas State who led two really good teams, including a Big 12 championship team 2 years ago, and so forth and so on. Appreciate John being here. And of course, last night was the night for Michigan Live, another great show in the books, but it's not too late for you to catch it. Head on over to the Michigan channel, check out John's work, and then make sure that you're live there next Tuesday night with John at 8 o'clock Eastern time on the Michigan channel. Amazon links in the description section. And the big selling point here is that you shop on Amazon. And if you use our link, you're helping partner with us to grow and to build all the channels here at the Voice of College Football. And it does not cost you a penny. So it's the one way, as of now, that you can contribute to the Voice of College Football in a monetary sense. And it does not cost you a penny. Kevin says, I understand your argument, but what about a college NIL salary cap for all colleges? How is that American? How does that not go against the law? So teams like Ohio State can just outspend other teams? That's what's already going on. So other teams were always outspending other teams. In 1970, teams were outspending other teams, maybe not on players, except for the whatever you believe about what was going on in college football in 1970, 80, 90, 2000, 10 years ago about paying players. Even put that to the side. There were still expenses to college football, and there were schools that were much more capable of throwing money at those expenses to impress and lure players. Bigger, better stadiums, bigger, better facilities, all of those things. Nicer training tables, better spreads at the dining hall, all that sort of thing. So even if we take it down to that level, so certain schools have always had more resources. That's just built into the system. Can't get away with that. Can't get away from that. And those are the same schools that make the sport more money. So think of it that as well. They're making more money for the sport. So it goes both ways. There's the Michigan Live show with TJ from Ronick Sports Talk. There it is. Kevin says the NBA has a salary cap. The NFL has a salary cap. It's time. You are missing a lot here, Kevin. Why don't you give me a call? But I'll explain it. The NBA is a business. The NFL is a business. Major League Baseball, NHL, MLS. Pick your sport. It's a business. Therefore, they can institute a salary cap. If I wanted to give money to LeBron James, our laws within this country allow me to do that, right? Regardless of how much money LeBron James makes and is worth. Way more money than ever any of us can ever imagine. All of us that are watching right now and talking put together don't have the money of LeBron James. I'm pretty safe in saying that. However, if I, as a private citizen, decided that through my business or me personally, I want to donate, I just want to give LeBron James money, I can still do that. He can make even more money. That's what's going on with these individuals in college football. They're not paid by the schools. They're not paid by the organization of college football because that does not exist. Therefore, you cannot institute a salary cap. There is not a salary cap, meaning an income cap for any of the athletes that you just cite right there in the NFL or the NBA. They have a salary cap from the league, but they do not have a cap on their income. You cannot just arbitrarily say, oh, NIL collectives can only give so much money to athletes now. And the Jaguar dealer can't give this individual their very best car. It can only be the $150,000 car. No, that's illegal. You can't do that. For this to be accomplished, the way you're stating it, Kevin, there would have to be a complete restructure of college football. It would have to be organized, and it would have to incorporate to say, all right, now college football is an organization. It is a corporation, and it's running a business, and therefore we can designate it as a business, just like wherever you work. So, Kevin, I don't know if you were employed anywhere, but if you are, they have a salary cap. It's called a budget. And they know that last year they made $10 million. And they have determined that 20% of their income is going to go toward salaries, because that enables them to employ enough people to work in the positions and pay them fairly based on the market to operate the business. And let's say they have a really good year, they're going to increase the pay. If they have a bad year, then they've got a choice to make. They're either going to decrease salaries, but that rarely happens because in high functioning corporations, they've determined and they've budgeted in lapses in business, so they don't have to cut pay or income. They don't have to pay less or cut salaries, but they build that in unless they have multiple bad years or just one devastating year, and then they have to lay people off. So hopefully you followed that. But unless college football becomes a business and incorporates, they can't have a salary cap for people's donations. How do you have a salary cap when people are donating money? Can't cap that. John has read the full NIL contract for Jaden Rashada. God bless you. They skirted the pay to play by saying must have a residence in Gainesville. Interesting. Yeah, we've got a record set with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football, and I wanted to pick his brain on the Florida State situation and the Florida. Players are being compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness, supposedly, by businesses and individuals. Yes. And as long as that's what's going on, then the NIL initiative is working. I have my doubts as to whether it's working. Every player that you know of who is earning NIL money, are they doing so in that manner? Are they earning that money based on name, image, and likeness? What seems to not make sense in that way would be the collection of fans' money, donating that to the players. There's nothing wrong with it. Fans can do whatever they want with their money. However, is there a name, image, and likeness that is being that's a sticky point right there. It's basically a donation. You're basically donating to the player. You're not demanding of that player that they reciprocate with some type of value of name, image, and likeness, an autograph, a Instagram post, advertising for your iced tea or your jeans or whatever. Yeah, we're just going to take a look at this. As John mentions right there, Michigan's next head coach. This is not a done deal. I am not letting you know that I believe that Jim Harbaugh is for sure going to the NFL. But as this drags on, taking a second interview and another trip to another location with another NFL team, the longer that a particular coach looks at options, the more likely they are to take one of those options and that they are seriously considering and determining, and the more likely that there are negotiations going on in that direction, as opposed to Jim Harbaugh putting an end to it, a stop to it, and saying, I'm going back to Michigan. I've looked at my options. I'm good to go. So we'll look at that tonight, 8 o'clock, 8:30. 8:30. We've got our Miami show that goes till 8 o'clock Eastern time. Then I've got to record with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football. Then we'll jump on here about 8:30 Eastern. I just want to know what all of you think about who should be the next Michigan head coach or who will be the next head coach. I can't say that I've got any great insight into that necessarily. I could give you my opinions on who I would hire and will do so. And I tend to agree with John. That's the first name on my list. I think that with what was proven this season against really good teams, I don't want to call them trying circumstances by any stretch. The Michigan coaching staff should have been prepared and was prepared for what happened at the end of the season, but still, it's a different situation. It's a somewhat unique situation where the coach leaves and the head coach or the head coach is taken out of the equation on game day. But let's also understand that Jim Harbaugh was there all week, that he was there all week. His presence, his direction, his guidance, his communications to the team and the coaching staff. And then, boom, he's pulled back and not allowed to travel to the stadium. He's actually at the hotel, actually traveling on site with the team. So maybe my level of being impressed for Sharon Moore might be less than many Michigan fans, but it's still, I respect what he accomplished and he got the job done. It's a different situation than, man, in season suspensions of coaches. The other one, most recently, is Urban Meyer at Ohio State in 2018, missed the first 3 games of the season. Now, that was a more difficult situation, clearly, because Urban Meyer was not with the team for 3 weeks. Urban Meyer had to turn the entire team over to Ryan Day. And so Ryan Day was in charge of practices, in charge of the coaching staff. He suddenly was elevated to interim head coach and then leading the team into game week and having to prepare the team, the schemes on both sides of the ball. Of course, there was a defensive coordinator in play. So Ryan Day didn't have to coach both sides of the ball, as Sharon Moore, of course, had Jess Minter. But that was a much more difficult situation logistically because there was just so much more responsibility placed on Ryan Day than there was on Sharon Moore. So that's really not debatable. But what Sharon Moore did was he was successful. Let's put it that way. He was successful. Now, what I don't know is that outside of these 3 games that Sharon Moore coached at the end of the season, and I believe one of the 3 at the start of the season, outside of that, based on his other accomplishments, is he considered head coaching material at Michigan, or was that what clinched it for him? And of course, he's not been named the head coach, but a lot of people do stand with John on this one. And again, he's the first name that I wrote down and the first one that comes to mind. And I've mentioned him a number of times as being what I think is the leading candidate. And I wrote down, I just thought of another one, about 6 or 8 guys. Corey Brad and myself, we talked about it, and Corey asked about candidates, and I spit out 4 or 5. And then before we jumped on here, I went and did a Google search, and lo and behold, the 4 or 5 that I thought outside of the Michigan coaching staff are the first ones that are popping up. So they're we might get surprised here, as we typically do in these situations where there's always about 4 or 5, 6 candidates that seem to be obvious as hot commodities across college football that would be elevated. So obviously you start at the top of college football and realize that guys like Steve Sarkisian and Dabo Sweeney and Kirby Smart, well, they enjoy their jobs, they're being compensated well, and they like where they are. So they are not candidates. And then you keep moving on down the list. And of course, it's those coaches who have elevated programs that have no business winning to the degree that they are. One of them's in Lawrence, Kansas, that those guys are the guys that come to mind as well. Lisa says Ryan Day did a more impressive job because he was thrown into it without any prior knowledge of having to do that. Harbaugh was still at Michigan. Yeah. So, of course, Sharon Moore was challenged with bigger games. They played Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. So he had a gauntlet of top competition. Ryan Day did not, except for they did have a trip to TCU and played at Jerry's World against a ranked TCU team. But just think about the difference between having the head coach there all week, coaching the team, everything's, and I'm guessing that Jim Harbaugh prepped both the team and, in this case, Sharon Moore the last 3 games, and then the 3 coaches to start the season by allowing them to take a more assertive role during the week in practice and not just coaching the team and conducting practices as usual. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's your coach on Saturday. And you know he's going to be the coach on Saturday, but we're still going to conduct our practices and everything exactly the same throughout the week. I'm guessing that Jim Harbaugh stepped back. He was there. He was present. He's the coach, but he allowed Sharon Moore to act as the coach during the week and not have it be the shock to the team on Saturday that, bam, now that's the guy. Where's Coach Harbaugh? Well, we know he's going to be gone. This is a shock to our system. So Jim Harbaugh, of course, handled that to whatever degree he thought it was going to be most effective. And you know what? It was most effective because it worked. So we don't know to what degree. And I'm sure he was asked that. I don't remember hearing him talk about that. And I'm guessing, knowing Jim Harbaugh, as we all do, and hearing him speak, that he did not explain that. I'm guessing that he did not really explain. He probably said, well, we took care of business and we made it all work and we worked together. All right, we got Moose here. Is anyone shocked that Moose is saying that Harbaugh had much more to overcome than Day? That's a ridiculous statement. He had tougher teams to play, but there's no comparison between the two. Come on. Okay. Just logistically. Yeah. Yes. Logistically. let me come up with a good comparison. I'm trying to think of a business or industry that has to perform at some point, that has a big day, and you got to perform on this particular day. Maybe if you run some kind of marketing business, let's say, and you have some kind of marketing business, and you got a big convention coming up, and you're the leader of the company is going to be there all the way through, and then they just can't be there on the day of the convention. On the day of the convention, the marketing convention, the leader of the company can't be there, but he was there all throughout to make sure everything's running smoothly, everything's being planned, everything. Versus, no, we have the biggest day of our company's existence in 3 or 4 weeks, and the president of the company is being suspended, and he cannot have communication with us, and he's gone, and we have to prepare for 3 or 4 weeks for that. Much tougher. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, it's not. It's so incredibly obvious. Again, I think most of you, well, I'm talking to Moose only, is relying strictly on the level of competition. Moose says, in my opinion, Jim Harbaugh with Ryan Day's roster would have a better record. Okay. So I'm stating facts, and I'm outlining a situation logically and logistically, and you are, yeah, that's an opinion. You don't know. I don't know. You can conjecture that. If they flipped rosters, who would win the games? I know that Ryan Day has a better record than Jim Harbaugh. So Ryan Day has been more successful, more consistently successful at Ohio State than Jim Harbaugh has at Michigan. He's got a better record. Aaron says only Ohio State fans dismiss the importance of play calling like this. I don't know what that alludes to. Yeah, we know that Ryan Day had a loaded roster when he got hired from Meyer. He also had never been a head coach in his life. And Jim Harbaugh had a program that had been established for years and years and years and years and years. And they also had, if they were not planning, if they did not have a contingency plan, then they're stupid. But I know that they're not stupid. They just won a national championship. So they had a contingency plan, and they knew what was going to happen and how they were going to implement a coaching change. So this should not have taken anybody off guard at Michigan. It was known, it was anticipated, it was expected, all of those things. All right, let's get to it. We've got our first guest of the day. We got Andrew Miller stopping by from Hook'em Headlines. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good, Mark. How are you?
My apologies. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
There we go. That was my issue. Appreciate you being here, Andrew. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we just want to get caught up on everyone. We decided, hey, we're going to do a quick hit throughout the week at 4 o'clock Eastern time and see what's going on in the transfer portal. And of course, a lot of Alabama, Washington, Arizona, San Jose State activity, of course, because those are the teams losing coaches. And there is that Arizona defensive lineman. Let's see.
Taoli Savea, I do believe that is.
Yes. So I did pronounce that correctly yesterday. Very good. I was just looking for his name. Couldn't find it. I got like 800 names written down. So yes, Savea is the most recent commit for the Texas transfer portal. It seems like he's a guy that was fairly productive.
Yeah, he's an important addition for Texas. Defensive tackle was a significant need heading into the offseason for the Longhorns. And, you lose defensive line coach Bo Davis, and that becomes even more of an apparent need to be able to get the right guys in place along the defensive line. After Davis left, Texas lost a defensive line commit, an early signee, DeAndre Robinson, 4-star from Florida. They also lost Trill Carter, senior defensive lineman, to the portal, and their top 2 defensive tackles, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. I mentioned Carter. Savea is a guy that can come in and kind of be that replacement as a depth guy, proven experience, good run defender, gave Arizona a couple of good years of rotational snaps, a few starts. He also had a really good game against Oklahoma last season for Arizona in their Alamo Bowl win. So that's something that always translates well for Texas. And last but not least, I think the familiarity that he has with Johnny Nansen, the new Texas co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. Savea this is his second time transferring. He actually transferred from UCLA to Arizona when Nansen had taken the defensive coordinator job with the Wildcats a couple of years ago with Jed Fish there. And so, there's a lot of familiarity, the connection between him and Nansen. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for all parties involved.
I don't remember what kind of game Isaiah Bond had against Texas, but of course there's another move that's a big pickup for the Longhorns. Isaiah Bond, probably the best wide receiver for Alabama this past season, and a guy that you got to scout and see in that particular game throughout the season. So your thoughts about Isaiah Bond?
Yeah, I think you can make a good argument that Isaiah Bond's the most important portal addition among the 8 guys that Texas has gotten so far. Bond was, like you said, one of the best wide receivers for Alabama last season. I think him and Jermaine Burton were really their most productive guys, their biggest threats. And Bond, extremely explosive athlete, straight line speed, just a burner, track level speed. I think he's got like a sub 10.5 second 100-meter dash time from high school. That speed obviously poses a deep threat to opposing defenses, but he's really a threat just at multiple levels of the field. He's a good route runner, can create separation with that speed and his acceleration. But also, if you want to get the ball out in space, screen game, jet sweeps, really getting him some crossers, short intermediate routes, things like that. He's always going to be a big play threat. And so, I think his addition really unlocks a lot of the idea of positionless football in the Texas offense. Because you look at other guys like Jonte Cook, like Ryan Wingo, the 5-star they brought in, also like Amari Niblack, another Alabama transfer addition, and Matthew Golden from Houston. Texas really has a ton of guys that are dangerous and can line up all over the place pre-snap on offense. And so Isaiah Bond is a perfect example of this, where he really just is a perfect fit in Sarkisian's offense.
As soon as you say that, I think about basketball, the last 10 or 15 years, where a lot of teams have been more so in the mode that we want everybody to be able to pass, shoot, handle the ball, be about roughly more so the same size than they were years and years ago, when the point guard was barely 6 feet tall and the center was 7'2", and there were obvious body types and different skill sets. And then you mentioned where, you can put anybody in the slot, you can put them wide, you can put them in the backfield, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, because for Texas, you really don't have that guy this year like they had on the boundary this past season, Adonai Mitchell, that was 6'2", 6'3" boundary receiver, where you can just chuck up the ball and have the trust that they can bring down those contested catches. But I think Amari Niblack can be that contested catch guy. Who's about 6'4", 235 pounds, large catch radius, NFL level physical tools. He's a guy that lined up out wide a lot last season at Alabama and out of the slot. And while he wasn't, he was more of a downfield threat, I think, than he was more of a boundary, more of like a boundary threat. He could definitely kind of still fill that role for you. I think Ryan Wingo could as well. But I think the idea of Sarkisian really being able to do anything he wants with different motion looks, different different tight end packages, running 3-4 wide receivers, whatever that be able to move these guys around and add different layers to the offense. That's a lot of what his offensive philosophy is all about. So I think the basketball comparison is very apt here, where all these speedy, wiry guys that can do so much damage in space and are so elusive is going to be really advantageous for Texas and SEC next year and really difficult to prepare for.
The secondary was the sore spot. I know from our Clemson guy that we talk to every week, Jason Priester, that he thought that Andrew Makuba was their biggest loss by far. That is really going to hurt them. So obvious logic to think that he's a big addition for Texas.
Yeah, Makuba, and even bigger now in terms of his versatility, because when Texas had originally landed Makuba out of the portal, I guess I'll jump back maybe a month in time here. When Makuba originally committed to Texas, the idea was for him to play at the nickel position. Texas was expecting Jahdae Barron to enter the NFL draft this spring, but Barron decided to return to Texas for a 5th season after getting some of the feedback from the NFL and the NFL draft. Sounds like he's looking to return and boost his draft stock for another year in 2024. But Barron's probably their best cover guy in the secondary, and so he's obviously going to be coming back and kind of be that staple at the nickel position. For Andrew Makuba, that means he can now slide back to safety, where he had played at Clemson for about the first year and a half he was there, including his freshman All-American season during the 2021 campaign. And so, for Texas, you have a really good situation here where you have multiple guys with proven Power 5 experience and are really just like high-level defensive backs. If I look at the nickel position and the 2 safety spots, last year Texas was kind of rotating at the position. Derek Williams, as a true freshman, came on strong down the stretch as their best cover safety. But now you're probably looking at a situation where you have Derek Williams, Andrew Makuba starting at safety, at least entering spring ball, and then Jahdae Barron manning the nickel position. You also have Xavier Filsaime, very talented early enrollee, true freshman, former 5-star, that's going to be competing at safety as well. You return Michael Taft, who I think was steady. He always knows where to be, is high football IQ guy. So you have depth here, but you also have a lot more high-end talent than you did last season at the safety position specifically.
Hook'em Headlines is where you can catch Andrew's work. You see the handle on X, and again, hook'emheadlines.com. We're just about 5 weeks or so away from spring practice. Has Texas announced its spring schedule?
I would have to go back and see. I know that they are planning to get underway. Here, let me actually pull up the calendar. I have it down on here. They are doing winter strength and conditioning. That started up yesterday. That's going on for a few weeks until spring break, which I believe is the first week of March. So it's around middle of March. I think somewhere in the week of March 11th to the 15th is where they're planning to begin. The spring game is April 20th. So that would line up.
I believe the last time we talked to you was just prior to the Washington game. So I have to think now that the sting of that loss has subsided to a certain extent. And of course, I think most reasonable observers would say that Washington outplayed Texas, but the way things broke in the last couple of minutes, the Longhorns had 4 shots at the 12-yard line. So there was a reasonable chance. It wasn't like them throwing Hail Marys from the 50-yard line, reasonable shots to win that game. So it's always a brutal loss when you feel like you're out of it, and then you get that glimmer of hope, and it's a reasonable hope, but your team's not able to get it done. So just your thoughts about where everything stands following a playoff loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Texas, while that loss did sting, most fans probably feel a similar way, where this season as a whole was very successful. I think that Texas, it wasn't out of the question during the preseason to think that they were going to make the playoff. And they were Big 12 favorites in the media preseason poll and everything like that. And so in a lot of ways, Texas did meet a lot of its goals, but surpassed a lot of them as well, winning double-digit games for the first time since 2009, winning the Big 12, making it to the playoff for the first time ever. And, like you said, really being one play away, 12, 15-yard touchdown pass away from beating Washington and moving on to the college football playoff national championship game. That said, I do think that, Texas made some mistakes in that game. We talked about the secondary a moment ago. That was something that's been a priority this offseason to upgrade, really move this secondary into a new era. I've been saying a lot, heading into the SEC in 2024. And, at this point, there's been 17 new enrollees among the high school signees in the 24 class that have arrived on campus, a ton of impactful portal additions. It really feels like this playoff loss was a long time ago already. It feels like longer than just 3.5 weeks. So, it still stings a little bit just knowing that, again, I really feel like all 4 teams that made the playoff had realistic shots at the national title. But knowing that Texas returns as many pieces as they do, and that, you're getting the expanded 12-team playoff next year, you got to feel good about heading into next season. And you get a shot at Michigan in week 2, the defending national champions. See what happens with Jim Harbaugh, but you get a shot at them week 2 in Ann Arbor. So, there's a lot of excitement building about what's coming in 2024. Despite
all right, Andrew, we appreciate you stopping by as always, and have a great rest of your off season. And we will track you down here sometime soon and hopefully get together again.
That's good. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Andrew. Check out Andrew's work. You see there, Hook'em Headlines, bastion of knowledge and insight on Texas football. And of course, the Longhorns are back. They are back. Yeah, I think we can safely say that. That was not a 4-loss, go to the Big 12 championship game, win a Sugar Bowl, and have one shining moment saying we're back, Sam Ehlinger. That was a complete season. That was a win over Alabama. That was a Big 12 championship. That was a playoff appearance in which they showed that they belonged. Has to be sustained, of course, and they go to the SEC. This light is bothering me. We will see if we can reposition that. Okay. Back to the chat, and we do have a couple other media contributors headed our way as we're going to put Iowa in the spotlight here in the next few minutes. Ralph says 5 years ago, 247 had a list of top 25 college coaches. I think there's only 7 still coaching in college football, which reminds me, it's about time for us to do our coaches rankings here at the Voice of College Football. It'd be interesting we will do that. We will do our coaches rankings. I rank them all the way through the Power 5. And so I just don't stop at 25 and then leave everybody guessing, but I rank every Power 5 coach, and then we will compare it to where I had them ranked last year. I will tell you this, Steve Sarkisian is going to be higher than he was last year, and Kalen DeBoer is going to be higher than he was last year. Aaron says the days of racking up victories over the Iowas and Nebraskas of the Big Ten are over. Got to play a contender in the championship game now. Oh, yes, in the Big Ten championship game. Moose says Day is great, but not elite. I don't know what the difference between those two are, but they're all semantics. I think Harbaugh, Smart, Saban, or Sweeney got that Ohio State job with a loaded roster, then they win multiple natties. And maybe Ryan Day will win multiple natties. We shall see. Let's understand that Kirby Smart won his first national championship at Georgia. Let's see. Not in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. So he went 5 seasons, right? Kirby Smart, 5 seasons. Then he won a national championship in 21. And very similar to Ryan Day, before that, he came within 1 play of winning a national championship in 2017 versus Ryan Day's 2022 against Georgia. Very similar to Ryan Day, Kirby Smart also had a national championship game loss. And Kirby Smart coached 5 seasons at Georgia and had no national championships, just like Ryan Day, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 5 seasons at Ohio State, no national championships. Nick Saban, he had already coached he was around 5. He was over 5 seasons before he won a national championship. Dabo Swinney, 2000, what? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 7 seasons before he won a national championship. Now, I'm not predicting the future. I'm not saying that Ryan Day is going to win a national championship. He's at one of the best places to win a national championship. Jim Harbaugh coached for how many years in college before he won a national championship? Michigan, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 8 seasons at Michigan and what, 3 at Stanford? Maybe 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, I believe. Those are the years. So those coaches all had more seasons than Ryan Day. Dave's here says that Ryan Day did his best job this last season. I don't think that's a ridiculous opinion. I don't completely agree. I think the 2020 season was difficult for everyone, and for Ohio State to reach a national championship with its roster gutted by COVID, that was pretty impressive. And the 22 season, of course, they were closer. Now, actually, their 23 regular season was better than their 22 regular season, just by the fact that they played Michigan down to the wire versus getting blown out in the fourth quarter. So if you make that the comparison in 2022 versus 23, but in 22, they got the opportunity to play in the playoff. And this is what's wrong with college football, or not just wrong with college football, because a lot of you like the subjective nature of the playoff selections and you think that's interesting and it leaves all these debates wide open, and it does. NFL fans don't have these kind of debates about who should be in the playoffs. They may have an argument that, oh, well, if Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt certain seasons, Green Bay would have been in the playoff. Sure. But I don't think that that's a talking point very often. It's just known that if you make the playoffs, you should have made the playoffs. If you didn't, you didn't, as opposed to college football. Ohio State, by most measurements, had a better season this year than they did last year. And they missed the playoffs this year, and they made the playoffs last year. Didn't have anything to do with them. It had to do with the situation involving everybody else around them and who they were being compared to. So that's just the nature of college football. All right, we are going to continue with our transfer portal hits. We got our guy Levi Stevenson dropping by from Wide Right Natty Light. Let me get it out. How you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's finally warming up here. It's not dreadfully cold for the first time in like a month.
Yeah, there is no snow here. It all melted today.
I've got a 3-foot drift in my backyard still.
Oh, well, that's going to take some time to.
Yeah, there was a stretch about a week and a half ago. We got 2 foot in 2 days.
Ouch. Yeah, we
not great.
here in Ohio did not get anything close to that. It just, we get the same weather you do. Basically, it sweeps across the country, but it didn't hit us quite as hard. We had more like 3 or 4 inches of snow.
Yeah, no, we had 2 feet, and then like right after it got done snowing, it was minus 25 for the high. So,
yikes.
Yeah,
okay,
not great, but that's all right.
Well, the first thing I'm going to hit you with, even though this is a show that we're designing to hit the transfer portal every day, is this gambling situation, and some discovery was made known yesterday that wow, this is a very, I will just say it by all information that was made known to all of us, I would say unlawful investigation.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, I mean, it smelled kind of fishy from the very, very beginning, but there's not, we didn't have enough to go on to say anything about that or anything. But um really what ended up being kind of the catalyst for getting this whole thing going um was one of the players that got pegged was Eni Wazirike, who had since graduated from Iowa State and was then playing for the Denver Broncos and had himself a very expensive lawyer. And turns out he has a very good one that a lot of other players that were uh, involved in it from Iowa State also signed on with this lawyer to be part of the same lawsuit. And this lawyer has been taking the state of Iowa to the cleaners on this one, going through and found. So basically, just kind of a high level thing for. I'm sure everybody's heard of this. Anybody that's watching this show is probably at least aware of the situation that had happened. But what the details that came out the last couple of days are really, really interesting. I'll kind of give an overview of this. So there was a special agent for the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation, the gaming division, the Iowa DCI, his last name is Sanger. He set up what's called a geofence around a couple buildings at Iowa State. And basically, what a geofence is that it allows the software to track anybody within a certain perimeter, whether or not they open the app. Basically, they can't really tell what they're doing in it necessarily, but they can tell who is opening the app and where, pretty precisely, like within feet, inside this geofence. So this agent had just been recently signed to the gambling division and to the gaming division, and found out that he had this cool software that could set up geofences, and he decided, well, let's just try it and see what happens. Well, turns out, but you can't really just do that, because that's a pretty significant violation of privacy. From a government official, from an unelected official. And he set up this geofence. He came back and said, oh, there's some interesting things here going on or whatever with some accounts that are popping up. He took it to his supervisors. They said to stop pursuing it. So what did he do? Set up a geofence in Iowa City to target a couple buildings from the athletic department. And as soon as he found, well, there's some stuff going on here too, he took that data and the stuff from Ames, combined together, and talked to his superiors, who then decided to greenlight it despite him being insubordinate. All this, none of this without any sort of warrant or anything like that. They're just kind of a random, oh, let's just put a geofence and see what happens. And then we're going to do it around the Iowa football facility too. And, it was pretty shady. And then the whole thing got greenlit, and then, went on. And then here we are. So there's some pretty significant allegations here of like violation of privacy, violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. All signs are pointing to the Iowa DCI and the state of Iowa getting housed on this really bad. It's going to look very, very ugly for the Iowa DCI. I'm sure this will take years to flesh out fully. But this is a big deal, because what it started out being a big deal because this was the first time we'd ever seen gambling accusations of any, in the modern era anyways, of athletes gambling at the college level. It's the first time we'd ever seen it. And it was brand new because sports gambling is new, relatively speaking, it's still new. NIL and all this stuff is all new. So it's a brand new world. So this was the first time that we had seen something like this happen in college athletics. And turns out it should have never happened, because the investigation should have never happened, because they had no right to continue start looking into people. Does that absolve the athletes that gambled of their wrongdoings? No, it doesn't. But there's also there's also a lot of data that the DCI uncovered, which magically ended up in the hands of the NCAA, despite them not conducting their own investigation or even asking about it. And they handed out a bunch of punishments based on charges that were apparently stemmed from data that was potentially illegally obtained and wasn't actually proven in court or anything like that. It was just an accusation of something that was actually technically not even illegal, because most of the athletes that had gotten name dropped in this case were over 21. And they were, they might have been using a girlfriend's or their mom's name or something like that for the account, but that is also not illegal. So, it's a mess, because the NCAA suspended all these athletes, and they have already served suspensions based on that were handed out based on data from a apparently bad investigation, potentially unconstitutional investigation. So you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. They can't unserve suspensions. You can't go back in time and let Deshaun Haneke play last season. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing that can happen. So this is all going to get really messy because you're talking about some athletes that potentially could miss out on pro playing money. And Wazirike, who knows if he's going to play in the NFL again? That's a lot of potential future income that's going to be lost. And Hunter Deckers was a guy that many people thought had a chance to eventually project to being an NFL player. I don't know if he would have a legitimate claim to that or not since he was a few years away, but I don't know. I don't know how that works. But, there's potentially future earnings lost here. There's scholarship times playing, scholarship money lost here. There's a lot of damages involved here that the state of Iowa and the Iowa DCI could be paying pretty dearly for what appears to be a pretty messy investigation.
Well, Levi, first of all, thank you for explaining all that in a plain-spoken way. I read all that, and we read that on the Iowa show yesterday, so I was aware of all of that and found it quite fascinating. But the one component in that I didn't know was the insubordination portion of it.
They told him not to pursue it, and he did it anyways. What? And then also part of the accusations of this too is that they had found data for just normal students too, that they were using the app underage or whatever it was, and they didn't pursue any of them. So not only was it kind of a bad investigation to start with, like the data collection part of it was potentially unconstitutional. They chose to only target high profile athletes at the two high profile schools in the state. They didn't go after you and I. They didn't go after Drake. They didn't go after Loris and Morningside and Clark. They didn't go after any of those. They went after Iowa and Iowa State. They went after high-profile athletes in the high-profile sports. So there's a whole bunch of this stuff that looks really, really bad.
Man, I got to kind of question his superiors because we both know that if that information was obtained illegally, that they were going down a path that they could possibly navigate to a certain extent, but that, as you kept bringing up, the best word for it is going to get quite murky and messy and just convoluted.
And it started out as a rogue agent, just going there, but then they greenlit the products of a rogue investigation. So, and this goes all the way up. Even back at last summer, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds had said that she knew about it and that she was, just kind of waiting to see what was coming out of it. So she knew about it. Everybody from the governor all the way down to this special agent knew about this, and they knew it was shitty. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear in your podcast, but they knew it was bad. They knew it was messy, and nobody stopped it. Nobody stopped it on this entire path and said, "Wait a second, was there a warrant issued for this?" Why nobody? The attorney general, whose job it is to enforce the law in this country, in the state of Iowa, didn't stop this investigation. Didn't think to ask, "Hey, has there been a warrant issued?" I don't know. Just a tremendous level of incompetence all the way up the food chain here.
And that's what usually is the path to this kind of disaster is that, anytime there's a large story and it's like, how did this get to this place? It's, oh, well, they dropped the ball. There are all these check points and they all failed. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, though, is the age requirement of being either a legal gambler or not versus then also being an athlete. So to me, there are two violators, and then one is kind of a double violator. So you've got just the underage gambling aspect of it, and that's obviously a criminal act.
Yep. Whether or not they were caught on a legal basis or not, they still did it. They still broke the law. I mean, it is what it is there. But
even though, of course, Levi, for those athletes that are of age, they have signed something that has stated that they are not going to participate in gambling.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I mean, like, even if this all comes back and the Iowa DCI and the state of Iowa have to pay out huge damages to all these athletes and stuff like that, that doesn't change the fact that they broke rule. Like, I mean, the NCAA doesn't really care about whether it's legal or not. They care about whether it's against their rules. And gambling is obviously against their rules. So, I mean, they still broke the rules. I mean, nobody's nobody's denying that they broke the rules. Even the athletes wouldn't deny that they broke the rules. But, you know, how it got to that point is how we're going to end up with this really big, messy lawsuit that's probably going to drag on for a long time.
Hmm.
It's a fascinating ordeal it's unwoven over the last 8 months or so, and it's probably going to go for another year or two, just as this whole thing shakes out. And it's going to be really fascinating to watch, because I really think the Iowa DCI is going to be in trouble after this.
Yes.
Like, I think a lot of people, I think a good chunk of people are going to lose their jobs out of this. And like, honestly,
yeah, you would think so.
it probably should.
And at that point, I don't understand the motivation. Are they really out to get or to make a name for themselves, or what is the motivation?
I mean, the second that they making a name for themselves would make the most sense. Like, let's say someone wanted to make a play for a political thing down the road. I don't know what in their brain thought, hey, you know what, get people to vote for me. Let's bust all of the good athletes at Iowa and Iowa State. That'll definitely make people happy. But, like, I think that's the motivation that makes the most sense. I mean, we might find that out later in court, or we may never find that out. But that does make the most sense, is, trying to make a name for themselves. This guy just got signed to the gaming division. He's trying to, shoot up his way up the ranks, wherever. Let's get a big, high-profile case that's going to go be slam dunk. We can, say, wow, I did this. I took down college sports gambling. La la la. Well, there's a procedure you got to follow if you want to try to do that. And doesn't appear that he did.
Now, more so on the field, Levi, there's a certain coach in the Big Ten at the University of Michigan who may be coaching in the NFL. And this is a long shot concern of yours. But if you do coaching candidate lists for the University of Michigan, you do come across the name of Matt Campbell. Is there some level of concern that he would be interested in the job?
I don't know. He's an Ohio guy, for one. So there's already something working against that. I'm sure he grew up an Ohio State fan, just like everybody else in the state of Ohio, outside of a few block radius around the Cincinnati campus, maybe. I'm not worried about it. I think there are guys that have, the way the coaching carousel really thrives on the hot name, the momentous names. After the 2020 season, when Iowa State won the Fiesta Bowl, that's when Matt Campbell probably hit his peak up to this point as like hot coaching candidate, all this or whatever like that. Iowa State's had a couple down seasons, had a pretty good bounce back season this year, and appears to be pointing in the right direction. But he's not the hot young candidate that maybe he was a few years ago. And that's not because he's not just as good a coach as he was or anything like that, but he's not the trendy name anymore. He's not a Lance Leipold, or he's not a Chris Kleiman or something like that, where he's coming up and he's rocketing up and stuff like that. He's already done his rocket thing and stayed at Iowa State. So I mean, at this point, if he leaves, he leaves. I guess it's just kind of a thing. It's just part of life, I guess. But I have not been given any reason to believe that he is leaving for any job, much less, this job, which I think Michigan will probably try to. I would think Michigan would try to make kind of not a splashy hire, but something that a name that's going to get fans excited, because the Michigan donor base will donate money to the end of the earth, but they want to have a person in charge. They want to have the Michigan man in charge or whatever. And Ohio, and Matt Campbell is not a Michigan man. He did not play in Michigan. He is not from Michigan. Like, there's nothing Michigan man about Matt Campbell. So maybe. It wouldn't shock me at all. I think Michigan would probably be doing a disservice if he wasn't at least on their maybe further down the list, give him a call type of things. But I would be pretty surprised if he's a primary candidate, and I don't think he would be chomping at the bit to go, especially because he's got a young team that's on the way up. He's got another Brock Purdy sitting under center now. There's a lot of things going in the direction that he would want them to go to stay here. So I'm not concerned about the Michigan job.
All right. Well, let's take off on the 2014 here. Levi Stevenson's here from Wide Right Natty Light, SB Nation, Iowa State. Check it out for everything Cyclones athletics. So aside from NFL departures and graduation and so forth, have there been moves made in the transfer portal, or ones that you're hopeful for that will make this team better in 24?
Iowa State is generally fairly light on the has been pretty light on the transfer portal for since it really kind of got going. They're definitely not. They haven't been big players in it like an Ole Miss or something like that has where they're just grabbing everybody. Or there's a few other ones. Like Kansas State, I think, was pretty heavy maybe this year. Oklahoma State was really heavy last year. Iowa State is not a transfer portal team. That's not how Matt Campbell likes to build a roster. I mean, that said, they will grab transfers to fill holes and stuff like that or whatever. Last year, had a couple really successful transfers in, I think this year. So this year they had 14 players leave in the portal, and they've only brought in 3. But there's a you'd think you'd ideally want to have a balance there, roughly 14 in, 14 out, 8 in, 8 out type of thing. But a lot of the guys that left were depth pieces. I don't like there wasn't the only 2 guys on here that started games were Eli Sanders and Cartavius Norton, both at running back. But these were guys that eventually by the end of the season had fallen back in the depth chart because Abu Sama took off in the Kansas State game and ran for 376 yards and 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns or whatever it was. Some outrageous yardage and touchdown total. And after that, pretty much cemented himself. He's the back going forward. Those guys want carries. They're running backs. They have short lifespans. Not in college as much, but if they have any dreams of playing the NFL, they need to get snaps now. And so I can't blame them necessarily for transferring because Abu Sama's there. Carson Hansen, the guy behind him, he's kind of a multi-purpose guy, can run him out in the slot and stuff like that. So they've got their bases covered at running back. And the freshman coming in is very, very talented. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but he those are the only 2 guys that left that played a lot of snaps. There's a few kind of depth guys in the secondary, like a Terrell Crosby or a Travion McGee that played some snaps, played some special teams. But none of the departures were starters or anybody that you would consider to be a significant loss. They did bring in a few guys though. The few guys they did bring in though are good good ads. So we've got Kennard Snyder. He's a defensive end from UL Monroe. Iowa State needs help on the defensive line. They need more depth. They've got a couple good guys on the top end that are good, but they really need depth behind there. I think Snyder is going to be a really nice fit there. Iowa State has pretty consistently had solid or better defensive line play in the Matt Campbell area under Coach Eli Rashid. So I think that's a nice add there. Dylan Barrett is an interior offensive lineman transferring from Wisconsin. Like that, Wisconsin cranks out good offensive linemen. And we're looking for guys right now because they're still in the process of kind of overhauling that thing and getting the personnel in that room in the vision of what Ryan Clanton wants to do. They've got a couple guys. Brennan Black was a freshman last year and looked really good, looked like a freshman a lot of times though, but really aggressive guy. And they're looking for more guys like that. And, if they're bringing in Dylan Barrett as a transfer, I can fairly assume that he probably fits that mold there. Didn't play much at Wisconsin, obviously, but, that's a guy that obviously needs help on the offensive line. And if he can come in, perfect. The other guy is Isaiah Alston. He's this is a really interesting piece here. He's a receiver from Army. He only caught 9 balls last year, but he averaged 30 yards a catch. Guy's a home run threat. If you watch the tape that he does have from Army, which unfortunately runs the triple option. So receivers, I didn't know you could transfer out of Army. Like I didn't know you could transfer out of the service academies, but apparently you can.
I thought the same thing when I started to see like they're not losing like 15 players, but I did see like 1 out of each of the military academies, and I thought, I wonder how that works. Didn't they make a commitment?
I think the deal is that they can transfer to play somewhere, but if they get called for active duty, they got to leave. I think that's how it works. But I had not heard of people transferring from the service academies before, so it's interesting. But I mean, the tape he does have, he looks like a big play type of threat that'll line up really nice alongside the rest of the stars. I'm sure he's got a shot at pushing for playing time there. I think this was a good ad. Iowa State is trying to find more weapons around Rocco Becht. And, they got to keep pushing forward and keep getting more playmakers. And that this is a guy that I think has a chance to come in and make a difference. Because I know they're trying to, I would say, just trying to get more explosive. They were more explosive last year than they had been in previous years. Much less of a dink and dunk type of team. They were taking more shots last year. And I think they want to continue to push in that general direction. And he's another step in that direction because he's a big time athlete, really good after the catch. I think him alongside with Jalen Nolan, Jaden Higgins are going to be they could be a fabulous starting 3 receivers there.
Levi Stevenson from Wide Right Natty Light, SB Nation. Levi, always appreciate you stopping by, breaking down the Cyclones for us.
No problem. Always happy to.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your winter, or however long it is before we get together again. And hopefully there will be not much more snow in your forecast.
Yeah, ideally. I don't know. We still got a couple months left to go. It's going to be, the snowblower's still fully gassed up and in the garage.
That's key.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Talking Iowa State, of course, they lost a bowl game to Memphis. I believe that was the Liberty, correct? And finished at 7-6, coming off that 4-8 season. We've got a Big 12 channel. You see it there on the screen. We've got a Big 12 channel that you can grab. The link's in the description section of the video, and we've got specific Big 12 shows there. We've got 2 West Virginia shows, and we've got 2 Big 12 shows every week. How about that? Don't pin me to the wall on when those shows air. Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, all about 8 o'clock Eastern time, right in that range. We got Clint Foster with the Biggest 12. That's on Tuesday night. We've got the Mountaineer Locker Room Show. That's on Wednesday, and one's Friday, and the Big 12 Fan Zones on Monday. Again, it's not right in front of me, but it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are live shows, all Big 12 football shows on the Big 12 channel. So please check it out. And every time I promote a channel, like we've got the Big 12 channel, we got the SEC channel, we started those at the beginning of the season. Here's the deal. Obviously, if you enjoy the Big 12, if you've got a Big 12 team, if you look through the videos and the live streams, again, we've got 4 shows, 4 live streams each week. Plus, in addition to that, I will do records with Big 12 contributors, and we'll post those on the Big 12 channel. And many of those you don't see here on the main channel. So that's an incentive. Or if you just enjoy what we're doing here at the Voice of College Football and say, you know what, I don't care about the Big 12, but it all works together, folks. It all works together. It's all tied together, which means please support us in any way that you can. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got I believe Elliot Clough is doing his darndest to try to get on here and connect. He's having some issues with the StreamYard, apparently. So hopefully Elliot can join us. I'll go through the chat in the meantime. So much going on at the University of Iowa. And, of course, we've got our Hawkeye show every Tuesday with Corey Brada. You're looking at Caden Proctor, the 5-star offensive tackle, coming in. You've got an offensive coordinator search still at Iowa. Beth Getz just named permanent athletic director. And then, of course, as we talked about with Levi, the gambling investigation and what was discovered in the last day or two about some unlawful searches. I find that pretty fascinating. All right, so we are waiting Elliot. In the meantime, understand that we've got a Florida State show at 6, Miami at 7. Then I'll be back here at 8:30. We're going to talk to Michigan football and run down coaching candidates. And who knows, Jim Harbaugh may not be the coach at Michigan by 8:30 tonight. So we are on Harbaugh watch here at the Voice of College Football. And if you know us and have been around for a while, you know that when there are coaching vacancies and coaching decisions made, that we jump on here as soon as possible and go live with all of you. All right. I believe what we will do is wrap it up here on our Transfer Portal Live. Maybe I'll connect with Elliot and we will record the Iowa segment, but it appears as though he's not able to jump on right now. We will see you in 40 minutes over on the Florida State channel for Seminoles Live, Miami Live at 7. Then I'll be back here on the main channel with all of you at 8:30 to talk Michigan football and Jim Harbaugh's destination right here at the Voice of College Football. See you in 40 minutes. No, we might have Elliot Clough here. Hang on. Elliot, what's going on today?
Mark, can you hear me?
You are trying your hardest, aren't you?
I am. I am on my way to Carver Hawkeye Arena for a men's basketball game this evening. So this is my first time connecting in my car here. So appreciate the patience. I tried the headphones. I tried Bluetooth. I tried everything. And now I think we finally got it figured out.
Hey, Elliot, we appreciate you making the effort. So we will dig right into it without further ado. I'll go right in line because there's so much going on. You've got to be one busy guy. In addition to the basketball obligations, you got this massive offensive tackle that people were so disheartened in, of course, making a choice for Alabama about a year ago. But here he is as a Hawkeye, and he's coming back home, and I'm sure people are all excited about that.
Oh, yeah. The fan base has definitely changed their tune from what it was a year ago. Crazy how things can flip like that on a 18-year-old, right? 18, 19-year-old. But, yeah, fans are absolutely thrilled to have him, Caden Proctor, in Iowa City now. He arrived a bit before the announcement came forth, but, and, of course, the news was bouncing around with everybody having their sources. But Caden's in Iowa City, and fans are absolutely thrilled to have him at left tackle, especially with the performance from the Iowa offensive line, not only last year, but the last several years, particularly at left tackle, a place where that's kind of been that guy's going to the NFL position for Iowa since the turn of the century, but that hasn't been the case with Mason Richmond there at left tackle the last few years. Caden Proctor, going to be a plug-and-play. I think I heard an ESPN personality, it might have been Greg McElroy, say that Caden should come in and move to guard. I'm about 99.999% sure that is not going to happen. He's going to be plug and play left tackle, and that even with some of his struggles early on, he's going to be an immediate upgrade there on that left side of the offensive line for Iowa.
So was Greg McElroy also looking out for Caden Proctor, just thinking he projects better as a guard?
I think so.
To the NFL? Yeah.
Right. I mean, with that said, he was a 5-star offensive tackle, the top tackle in the class in 2023. He's gained a little bit of weight, so maybe that movement, I imagine, isn't quite as quick. But, I mean, we've seen what Iowa's been able to do with a barrage of their players who come in and, well, typically gain a bunch of weight, but you can get that weight off even in an off season. I think Iowa will be better served with him at left tackle. They've got some guys there at guard, but I mean, anybody and everybody's job is up for grabs right now, considering how bad the offensive line has been the last several years. And personally, I think starting with Caden Proctor as your left tackle is the move for Iowa.
Elliot, I did a little research on this one. You'll know these names and the spans of time. So obviously Xavier Wampa, the safety, is the most recent 5-star, and he was an in-state guy. Then you go back to AJ Epinesa in the 2017 class out of Illinois. He was the previous 5-star. Then I went back, depending on your service, of course, but they line up fairly equal. And you go back 09, 08, 07, and then the rankings and the ratings become a little sketchier as you go back in time. But just the point being, 5-stars don't sign at Iowa. So beyond the just, okay, anytime you can get a 5-star, let's understand that the chances of this player reaching the NFL are exponentially higher. And I get in these arguments all the time with people that say a 5-star doesn't really matter. Well, yes, there are busts at the 5-star ranking, but they are like a 40-some% chance of playing in the NFL versus like a 12 or 13% chance for a 4-star. But do you think that in addition to just, okay, this is an elite player that we're going to put here, or elite potential player, that there is any periphery ramifications in a negative way sending messages to other linemen just in terms of the status of the program, if this is going to pay off in addition to just the playing ability?
Well, to me, I don't think that is much of your concern. I think if the offensive line had been good the last several years, then maybe you take that into consideration. But the offensive line hasn't played itself into having that type of pull. Like, I'm okay with, I mean, as somebody who's on the outside watching, and, trying to reflect the performance of the fan base and such, I'm okay if Mason Richmond's pissed off. Like, you got a 44 PFF grade, you get that up,
Yep.
Maybe we'll take your opinion into consideration. But nah, when you get this opportunity to bring in a guy like Caden Proctor, that's not a consideration at all. And, to boot, the offense has been atrocious as a whole, but the defense as a whole has been patient. The locker room has stayed together. And I think that is reflective of who the guys are in this locker room. They just want the team to be good. And if that means bringing in a guy like Caden Proctor, who is a 5-star, who will be a plug-and-play, no matter what anybody says, George Barnett could come to the podium tomorrow and say, well, he's got to earn his spot. That's BS. They'll probably operate as such, but Caden's going to come in and be the best offensive lineman right off the bat. So to me, I don't think you're taking into account egos into this for a variety of reasons, but a big one being that there aren't really a ton of egos in that locker room comparatively to other P5 programs, right? I mean, Jay Higgins, trying to think here, Nick Jackson, Logan Lee is no longer with the program. He's moving on to the NFL, but having leaders like this, it's all about the team, and Caden's going to make the team better. So I don't see a scenario where you really have to factor that in, truthfully.
You can catch Elliot's work there at Rivals on the Iowa platform. Awesome Iowa. There you see it on the banner. Follow Elliot on X as well. It's easy. Elliot Clough with 1 T right there. You see it on the banner. All right, Elliot, in regards to an offensive coordinator, the search continues, and it's been awfully quiet. And, of course, these positions are usually filled at this point. So this is a rare, wait into the off season. So where do you think we stand on this?
Well, I can tell you that based on everything that I've learned over the last year, and even, growing up in Iowa, this amount of time it's taken to make the hire is not a surprise at all. It just falls right into the category of how everything has gone offensively in Iowa City for the last decade. By the sounds of it, per a few reports, Christ was the guy, and then he just decided to opt out. For what reason, I don't know. And I don't know that a lot of people know. Kirk Ferentz might be the only one who knows why he decided to opt out. But, you look at it, and the thing that sticks out to me is Kirk willing to take his hands off the offense? That's the thing, because I don't know that Paul Christ would want to be, in effect, helicopter parented. I'm not saying that KF would do that exactly, but Chris may have felt that way. And again, this is just speculation, so I'm not positive as to why he didn't take the position. Maybe he felt like he, deserved more money than they were offering. Who knows? But as far as I'm aware, there are a few guys that have had interviews over the last couple of weeks, and it does appear to be moving forward. Whether it's moving forward to the pace of a snail or a rabbit, that's the question. I venture to guess it's going to be somewhere in the snail department. I don't know if this is going to be another 2-3 weeks. I don't know if this is going to happen tomorrow, but it's in the process of getting done. You hope that, fans hope that it's sooner rather than later. I know Iowa has February 3rd Junior Day coming up here. For juniors, and obviously a few other recruits coming through at that point in time, and of course spring ball practices really starting to pick up here soon. So I know they're hoping it gets done sooner rather than later.
Elliot, before we let you go, Beth Getz named permanent athletic director. No big surprise there. Outside of the way she handled the contract controversy with Brian Ferentz, Was this something that you felt as though there had been other actions that she had made that showed that she was the right choice?
I think the first one has got to be how she has already embraced, or how quickly she embraced NIL. Brad Heinrichs, the head man at Swarm, fully endorsed this move. She has made so much more headway than Gary Barta ever did. And Gary, I wasn't around for a large portion of his tenure as the AD. I don't necessarily know how he operated fully, but what I've gathered is he was one of the guys that didn't exactly embrace NIL to the degree that you need to now in 2024 in college football. And Beth has fully embraced it. I've seen, they do big things on the big board at football games about Swarm and at basketball games about Swarm. And there are events always, and Beth is fully in support of that. And so that's the number one thing to me. She has a vision towards the future. She's already started plans to help improve Carver Hawkeye Arena because I don't believe it. Well, it was built in the 70s, so it's been a while. They need to get the fans, particularly the students, closer to the floor. By the sounds of it, Beth is making some headway there, and so those are the two big things to me, other than, of course, the Brian Ferentz situation that have shown that she wants the job, she'll be good at the job, and she's been endorsed by not only Brad, but by head coaches across Iowa athletics as well.
And then lastly, Elliot, it was a bit of a head scratcher, or to say the least, the information that was discovered yesterday and that came out concerning the gambling investigation of both Iowa and Iowa State, and how that information and those people were, surveyed of sorts outside of buildings unlawfully without search warrants.
Yeah. That I think some folks had an idea that was going on. Tom Brands, the head wrestling coach, the wrestling program, was involved in this, came out and was kind of criticizing the media today, saying that this was a possibility and that the media didn't do the work to find out. Well, these are court filings. Things aren't exactly available to the media like one might think, but this is not good for the state of Iowa. For Iowa athletes, Iowa State athletes, to me, this opens up, and I'm not a lawyer, but by the looks of it, this is a situation where these athletes could very well sue the state of Iowa and make a good amount of money, and they deserve it. I mean, Noah Shannon, it was effectively that, I don't know if you remember that commercial, Mark, with, you got to be quicker than that. The guy with the fishing pole. It was effectively that with Noah Shannon's eligibility. And it was just cruel the way the NCAA operated during all of that. And Shannon, I don't see any of these guys getting their eligibility back because they still did break the rules with the NCAA. But I mean, you got to think they're going to be able to sue the crap out of the state of Iowa and get some money out of it. I hope they do, because this is not how things should operate in the United States of America, nor the state of Iowa. I think it's complete BS. And I don't know the intricacies of how the law works or how these people involved will be punished, but they should be swiftly, and it should be done and taken care of quickly, in my opinion. Of course, we know anything with government doesn't get done quickly. So we'll see how this shakes out.
Absolutely. And what we just learned in the previous conversation was it's one thing when there's a rogue individual that's breaking the law and trying to acquire that kind of information. But when he goes to his superiors and then he goes to the other campus and they have knowledge of this and they still take that information and still run with it and present a case, well, then yes, absolutely. Everything you just stated. Elliot Clough with Iowa Rivals. Please join him right there. Elliot, we appreciate you stopping by. Enjoy the basketball tonight.
Mark, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
All right. Once again, Elliot Clough joining us to talk some Hawkeyes. And we are going to get set up for our next run at college football, Florida State style, over on the Seminoles channel. That's at 6 Eastern, so just about 20 minutes away from that. Join us on the Florida State channel at 6 p.m. Eastern, Miami at 7. We'll be back here at 8:30 approx on the Michigan coaching search that could possibly need to take place if Jim Harbaugh, in fact, does bolt for the NFL. And I mean bolt, possibly as in Los Angeles, now San Diego, once they've been both in a number of times gone by in the 60s and 70s. But yes, the Los Angeles Chargers. All right. Appreciate y'all being here. We will see you in 20 minutes on the Florida State Live Show.